The Wisconsin dusk hung heavy over Willow Creek Cemetery, its ancient oaks casting long shadows across rows of weathered headstones. The air was thick with grief and the scent of fresh earth, the murmurs of mourners barely audible over the pastor's soft prayers. At the center of the gathering, a small white coffin gleamed, adorned with a spray of wild flowers, holding 6-year-old Lily Harper, her life cut short by a seizure, or so they believed. The crowd's muffled sobs broke the hush, but a piercing bark shattered the solemnity. A black German shepherd, Shadow, burst through the parted mourners, ignoring his handler's commands. The canine, his scarred muzzle quivering, raced to the coffin, leaping atop it, his body trembling but resolute. Daniel Reed, 45, a biker with graying brown hair, his leather jacket patched with veteran insignias, stood at the edge, his weathered face taut. His hands clenched, a familiar tension from his army days stirring. Beside him, Clara Harper, 40, Lily's mother, her blonde hair tied back, her teacher's sweater frayed, gripped a stuffed bunny, her eyes wide with shock. She'd insisted Shadow attend, but now she feared what his frenzy meant. "Get that dog off." Dr. Richard Monroe, 60, silver-haired, the hospital's chief physician, barked, his suit pristine, his face flushed with indignation. "This is a disgrace." 2 cemetery workers lunged for Shadow's leash, but the dog growled, baring teeth, a defiance never shown to his handler. Clara's hand flew to her mouth, her voice trembling. "Daniel, what's he doing?" Daniel stepped forward, his heart pounding, recognizing Shadow's alert stance from combat missions. This wasn't mourning. Shadow was signaling something critical. "Hold on," Daniel said, his voice low, cutting through the chaos. "He's trying to tell us something." Monroe's eyes narrowed, his voice sharp. "Reed, don't make a fool of yourself." "Remove him, now!" Shadow's barks turned frantic, his paws scraping the coffin's lid, claws digging into the wood. Sarah Harper, 16, Lily's sister, her blonde hair tucked under a hoodie, pushed through the crowd, her voice desperate. "Uncle Daniel, Shadow's never wrong." "He knows Lily." Clara's tears fell, her voice breaking. "Lily loved him, Daniel. If Shadow's acting like this, please listen to him." Daniel's gaze locked on the dog, memories of saving Lily from a fire at 3, her tiny hand in his, flooding back. "Open it," he commanded, his voice rising, silencing the crowd. "Open the coffin now." The mourners froze, Monroe's face paling, his voice a hiss. "This is madness, Reed. You're defiling her memory." But Clara's hand gripped Daniel's arm, her voice fierce. "Do it, Daniel, for Lily." The funeral director, trembling, hesitated, looking to Clara, who nodded, tears streaming. "I'm her mother. Open it." Shadow's barks crescendoed, his body straining as the director unlocked the latches. The lid creaked open, revealing Lily, still in her blue dress, hands folded. For a moment, silence held. Then Dr. Emily Chen, 35, her black hair tied back, her neurologist's scrubs crisp, pushed forward, her fingers pressing Lily's neck. "She's alive," she gasped, her voice sharp, cutting through the shock. "Faint pulse, but she's alive." Chaos erupted. Mourners screamed. Officers surged forward, Clara collapsing against Sarah, sobbing. "Lily, my baby." Shadow's barks turned triumphant, his tail whipping, but Daniel's eyes caught Monroe, frozen, his face not relieved but terrified, as if a secret had unraveled. Emily's voice was urgent, checking Lily's vitals. "Ambulance, now." "She's in catalepsy. Sedatives likely. It mimics death." Daniel's phone was out, calling for medics. His voice clipped, but his gaze never left Monroe, whose hand twitched toward his pocket. The twist landed like a thunderbolt. Emily's fingers brushed Lily's wrist, finding a tiny needle mark barely visible, surrounded by a faint bruise. "This isn't a mistake," she whispered, for Daniel alone. Someone overdosed her deliberately. Clara's sob choked, her voice raw. Overdosed? Who'd hurt my little girl? Shadow's growl returned, his nose snapping toward Monroe, who stepped back, his voice shaky. Absurd! She had a seizure. But Daniel's blood ran cold, his voice a growl. You signed her death certificate, Monroe? Why so quick? The medics stormed in, gurney rattling as Lily was whisked away, Clara clinging to her hand. Shadow stayed at Daniel's side, his eyes fierce, a vow to protect. The cemetery was now a crime scene, and Daniel knew Lily's survival was just the start, and Shadow's barks had uncovered a heart-wrenching truth. The Wisconsin dawn draped Willow Creek in a soft gray mist, the town's quiet streets lined with shuttered shops and fading murals, a relic of its once thriving past. Daniel Reed sat on the creaking steps of his weathered trailer, his graying brown hair tousled, his leather jacket slung over a rusted chair, a lukewarm coffee mug in his hands. At 45, the former Army medic turned biker bore the scars of PTSD in the lines of his face, his days filled with motorcycle runs and solitude. Shadow, the black German shepherd he'd rescued from a ditch, lay in the gravel yard, his scarred muzzle still, his brown eyes scanning the fog, his ribs less stark now, but his spirit wary. Once a canine hero, Shadow's retirement after a meth lab explosion hadn't dulled his instincts. Clara Harper, 40, Lily's mother, her blonde hair in a loose bun, her teacher's sweater frayed, sat beside Daniel, her hands trembling. Sarah Harper, 16, Lily's sister, her blonde hair tucked under a hoodie, knelt by Shadow, her voice shaky. He saved her, Uncle Daniel, didn't he? The cemetery's chaos, Lily alive, misdiagnosed as dead, hung heavy, and Willow Creek's opioid crisis loomed like a storm. Shadow knew Sarah, Daniel said, his voice low, raw, his gaze on the dog. He wouldn't let her go. Clara's tissue crumpled, her voice breaking. She's still in a coma, Daniel. The doctors, they don't know if she'll wake up. Daniel's throat tightened, memories of pulling Lily from a fire at 3, her tiny hand clinging to his, stinging. She's a fighter, Clara. Shadow sensed her heartbeat. We'll find who did this. Sarah's eyes flashed, her voice fierce. Shadow's a hero, Uncle Daniel. He'd never bark for nothing. Shadow's ears flicked, his nose nudging Sarah's hand, a flicker of trust beneath his guarded stare. A pickup crunched up the dirt drive, its headlights piercing the mist. Dr. Emily Chen, 35, her black hair tied back, her neurologist's scrubs practical, stepped out, a medical file in hand. She'd confirmed catalepsy at the cemetery, her suspicions igniting the case. Morning, she called, her eyes on Shadow, who tensed, a low growl rumbling. Daniel stood, his voice calm. Easy, boy, she's with us. Emily stopped short, her voice urgent. Lily was overdosed with sedatives, Daniel. Hospital grade, not accidental. Someone wanted her gone. Clara's breath caught, her voice a sob. My baby. Who'd do that to her? Emily opened the file, her voice steady. The needle mark was precise, wrist, hidden, multiple doses, likely over days. This was planned. Daniel's pulse quickened, his voice sharp. Days? Someone at the hospital, then. Clara's hand covered her mouth, her voice trembling. Dr. Monroe treated her. He said her seizures were worsening. Sarah's phone screen glowed, her voice panicked. I found something, Uncle Daniel. Lily's hospital chart. Someone altered her meds last week. Shadow's growl deepened, his body shifting toward the road, where a black sedan idled, its driver obscured. Daniel's hand hovered near his knife, his voice cold. That's been there since sunrise. Emily's eyes narrowed, her voice tense. They're watching us, Daniel. That sedative. It's not just about Lily. It's bigger. Clara's tears fell, her voice fierce. They tried to bury her alive. What kind of monster does that? Shadow's hackles rose, his nose sniffing the air, leading Daniel to Lily's stuffed bunny left on the steps. The dog pawed at it, a faint whine escaping. Daniel ripped the seam, his fingers brushing a hidden microchip, hospital-issued, buzzing faintly. "What the hell?" he muttered, his heart racing. Emily's face paled, her voice low. "That's a tracker. Someone's been monitoring Lily." A screech of tires broke the silence. The sedan roared off, vanishing into the mist. Sarah's voice trembled, clutching Shadow. "Uncle Daniel, they know we're onto them." Daniel gripped the chip, his voice a growl. "They're scared." "That means we're close." Clara stood, her voice steel. "Close to what, Daniel? Losing Lily again?" He looked at her, his eyes burning. "To justice, Clara. For her, for Willow Creek." Shadow's whine was a vow, his eyes locked on Daniel, ready to fight. The twist landed like a knife. Sarah's phone pinged, a new text from an unknown number. "Back off, Reed, or Lily's next." Daniel's blood ran cold, his voice fierce. "They're targeting us now." Emily bagged the chip, her voice urgent. "We need to get to the hospital, Daniel. Monroe's records are there." Clara's tears fell, her voice raw. "I'm coming. No one hurts my daughter twice." Sarah hugged Shadow, her voice defiant. "I'm helping too." "Shadow's with us." The trailer was no longer a refuge, it was a front line, and Shadow's instincts had ignited a war Daniel couldn't back down from. The Wisconsin night cloaked Willow Creek in a damp, heavy fog. The Willow Creek Hospital, a stark monolith of fluorescent lights and cold linoleum under a moonless sky. Daniel Reed sat in a cramped waiting room, his graying brown hair matted with sweat, his leather jacket creased, a half-drunk coffee gone cold on the table. At 45, the former Army medic turned biker carried the weight of his PTSD, sharpened by the revelation 2 days ago that 6-year-old Lily Harper was alive, saved by Shadow's barks at her funeral. The black German shepherd lay by the door, his scarred muzzle tense, his brown eyes scanning the shadows, his healed ribs a testament to his survival of a meth lab explosion. Clara Harper, 40, Lily's mother, her blonde hair loose, her teacher's sweater rumpled, clutched a photo of Lily, her hands trembling. Sarah Harper, 16, Lily's sister, her blonde hair under a hoodie, sat cross-legged, scrolling through Lily's hospital records on her phone, her voice shaky. "Uncle Daniel, something's off with her charts." The microchip found in Lily's stuffed bunny and a threatening text, "Back off, Reed, or Lily's next," had turned their quiet town into a battleground. "Show me, Sarah," Daniel said, his voice low, raw, his gaze on Shadow, whose instincts had saved Lily. Sarah's screen glowed, her voice trembling. "It's from last month. Increased sedative dose, but her seizures were stable." Clara's photo slipped, her voice breaking. "Doctor." "Monroe signed it, Daniel. He said she needed stronger meds." Daniel's throat tightened, memories of carrying Lily from a burning shed at 3 burning in his chest. "He's hiding something, Clara." That overdose wasn't a mistake. Shadow's whine was soft, his nose nudging Daniel's hand, his loyalty a lifeline after the sedan's ominous retreat. A soft knock broke the silence. Shadow's growl erupted, his hackles up, his body coiled. Daniel grabbed his knife, motioning Sarah to stay back, his voice a whisper. "Clara, behind me." Clara hesitated, her eyes on Shadow, then nodded, clutching Sarah. Daniel cracked the door, revealing Dr. Emily Chen, 35, her black hair damp, her neurologist's scrubs creased, a toxicology report in hand. "It's me," she said, her voice urgent, glancing at Shadow, who softened but stayed alert. Lily's catalepsy was induced by barbiturates, Daniels. Administered over weeks, likely in her IV. Daniel's pulse spiked, his voice sharp. Weeks? At the hospital? Emily nodded, her face grim. The pharmacy logs are falsified. Someone's covering their tracks. Clara's sob choked, her voice raw. My little girl. They drugged her for weeks? Sarah's phone pinged, her voice panicked. Another text, Uncle Daniel? Same number. You're dead, Reed. Shadow's growl deepened, his nose snapping toward the window where headlights flickered, a black sedan idling across the lot. Daniel's hand tightened on his knife, his voice cold. They're back. Emily's eyes widened, her voice fierce. We need Monroe's files, Daniel. Now! But Shadow's bark turned frantic, his body lunging at the door as boots echoed in the hall, too heavy, too deliberate. Daniel shoved the table aside, his voice urgent. Sarah, get to the nurse's station. Stay there! Sarah grabbed Shadow's leash, her voice trembling. Come on, boy! Clara followed, her voice fierce. I'm not leaving you, Daniel! He ignored her, his army instincts kicking in, motioning Emily to cover the rear. Go, I've got this! The door burst open, 3 men in dark gear storming in, one wielding a silenced pistol. Reed, the leader snarled, his voice low. Hand over the chip. No one gets hurt. Shadow's snarl was thunderous, breaking free from Sarah, tackling the leader, his jaws disarming the pistol, pinning him to the floor. Sarah screamed, her voice raw. Shadow, no! Daniel fired a warning shot with his concealed carry, his voice a roar. Drop your weapons. The second man swung a baton, but Emily cracked a clipboard over his arm, her voice fierce. Stay back! Clara grabbed a chair, smashing the third man's knee, her voice desperate. You won't touch Lily's truth! Shadow's growl shielded Daniel, who zip-tied the leader, his bruised rib screaming. The sedan's engine roared outside, tires screeching as it fled. Sarah clung to Shadow, her voice sobbing. They're gonna kill us, Uncle Daniel. Daniel knelt beside her, his voice steady. Not while Shadow's here, Sarah. Emily's flashlight swept the leader's gear, her voice urgent. Hospital security badges, fake. This is organized. Daniel rifled the man's pocket, finding a burner phone, its screen flashing a text. Monroe's orders. Get the chip. Daniel's blood froze, his voice trembling. Richard Monroe, the chief physician? Clara's hand covered her mouth, her voice a sob. He was her doctor. How could he? Shadow's whine was sharp, his nose pawing the leader's vest, revealing a hidden vial. Barbiturates, labeled with a hospital crest. Emily's face paled, her voice raw. They're dosing patients. Monroe's running a cover-up. The twist landed like a bomb. Sarah's phone buzzed again, a video loading. Lily, weeks before her death, in her hospital bed, whispering, Uncle Daniel, the medicine tastes funny. Daniel's heart stopped, his voice fierce. Monroe's office, at the hospital. We're going now. Clara's tears fell, her voice steel. I'm with you, Daniel, for Lily. Emily bagged the vial, her voice grim. This is a hospital conspiracy, Daniel. They'll kill to keep it quiet. Shadow's eyes met Daniel's, fierce, ready, a vow to protect Sarah. The waiting room was no longer safe. Monroe's betrayal had turned it into a trap, and Shadow's instincts were their only guide through a deepening scandal. The Wisconsin fog was a thick veil, the Willow Creek Hospital's administrative wing a maze of locked doors and shadowed corridors under a storm-soaked sky. Daniel Reed crouched behind a filing cabinet, his graying brown hair damp with sweat, his leather jacket torn from the frantic escape from the hospital waiting room ambush hours ago, where Shadow's ferocity had saved them from Dr. Richard Monroe's hired thugs. His bruised rib throbbed, but his heart raced with dread for 6-year-old Lily Harper, still comatose in the ICU. misdiagnosed as dead due to a barbiturate overdose. Shadow, the black German shepherd, pressed against him, his scarred muzzle low, his brown eyes piercing the mist, his bandaged flank a badge of his fight. Once Bravo, a K9 brutalized in a meth lab explosion, Shadow's instincts had led them here to Monroe's office, chasing proof of his hospital cover-up. Clara Harper, 40, Lily's mother, her blonde hair loose, her teacher's sweater soaked, knelt nearby, her breath sharp. Sarah Harper, 16, Lily's sister, her blonde hair under a hoodie, clutched Shadow's leash, her eyes wide. Officer Michael Hayes, 50, his gray hair mussed, his police uniform creased, scanned the hall with a flashlight, clutching a tip about Monroe's falsified records. The wing, a hub of hospital secrets, loomed, its silent offices a gateway to truth or danger. Corner office, east side, Hayes whispered, his voice taut, pointing to a locked door. Guards, 3, armed. We get those files, we nail Monroe. Daniel's hands shook, gripping a crowbar, his army instincts battling fear, but his voice was fierce. For Lily, for Shadow, I'm in. Shadow's lunge at Monroe's man, exposing the barbiturate vial, fueled his resolve. The cemetery's miracle, Lily alive, echoing. Sarah's voice trembled, stroking Shadow. He'll find it, Uncle Daniel. He's our hero. Clara's hand gripped Daniel's arm, her voice raw. Lily's fighting, Daniel. Don't let them steal her again. Hayes's flashlight caught a guard's shadow, radio buzzing. They're shredding files, he said, his face grim. We're out of time. Shadow's whine was urgent, his nose sniffing the air, leading them through the fog, his training sharp despite his trauma. Daniel nodded, his throat tight, the waiting room's threat. You're dead, Reed, ringing in his ears. Let's move, he said, his voice low. The office door was ajar, revealing a sterile interior, desks, shredded paper piles, and a faint hum of a computer. Daniel slipped in, Hayes and Clara covering his flanks, Sarah and Shadow trailing, the air thick with ink and deceit. Shadow's bark was sharp, his body tensing at a locked safe. Daniel pried it open, his breath catching, files, a laptop, and a USB drive labeled Patient Records. This is it, he gasped, grabbing the drive, but Shadow's growl turned feral, his nose pawing a crate marked Disposal. Clara yanked it open, her voice trembling. Charts. Lily's EGs altered. Monroe faked her tests. Sarah's phone buzzed, her voice panicked. Another text, Uncle Daniel. You're too late, Reed. Shadow's hackles rose, his nose snapping toward the hall. Boots echoed, heavy, deliberate. Headlights roared outside, 2 black sedans screeching into the lot. Monroe's men spilling out. 5, rifles raised, their leader shouting, "The files, Reed, now!" Daniel dove behind a desk, shielding Sarah, Shadow charging, tackling the leader, his jaws disarming a rifle, pinning him to the floor. Hayes fired, grazing a second man, his shots precise, but the others advanced, bullets shattering glass. Clara's voice was a sob, clutching the USB. "They'll kill us, Daniel!" Sarah screamed, her voice raw. "Shadow, come back!" Daniel tackled a third man, zip-tying him, his ribs screaming, his voice fierce. "Stay with me, Sarah." Shadow spun, shielding Clara, his bloodied flank heaving, his eyes fierce. The leader, bloodied, laughed, his voice cold. "Monroe's done with you, Reed. Spectre wants those files burned." Daniel's rage erupted, his voice a roar. "Not today!" He swung his crowbar, cracking a guard's arm, Shadow's snarl protecting Sarah, who clung to a crate, whimpering. Hayes's radio crackled. "Doctor." Emily Chen at the ICU, her voice urgent. Daniel, Lily's crashing. Another dose. Someone's in her room. Daniel's heart stopped, his voice trembling. They're hitting her again. The twist landed like a sledgehammer. Clara's hand shook, pulling a hidden recorder from the safe. Lily's voice crackling. Mommy, Dr. Monroe's friend scares me. A man's voice followed. Keep her sedated. Spectre's orders. Daniel's blood froze, his voice raw. Spectre. The hospital board chair. Ellen Vaughn? Shadow's bark spiked, his nose at a guard's vest, revealing a burner phone flashing. Vaughn's orders. Eliminate Harper Reed. Sarah's sob choked, her voice fierce. They're everywhere, Uncle Daniel. Hayes tackled a fourth man, his voice grim. We're pinned. More guards flooded in, 7 tasers and knives surrounding them. Shadow lunged, disarming a taser, protecting Clara, while Daniel's shots bought seconds, grazing a guard. Sarah's voice was desperate, clutching Shadow's leash. Don't let them win. The leader aimed at Shadow, his voice cold. Your mutts first. Daniel threw a chair, knocking the rifle free, his rage a soldier's fire. You'll never touch him! Shadow pinned another guard, his jaws fierce but controlled. Hayes tackled a 6th, but the radio buzzed again. Chen, her voice panicked. Daniel, it's Nurse Linda Gray, Clara's friend. She's in the ICU with a syringe. Clara's scream was primal, her voice breaking. Linda, my best friend. She'd never. But Daniel's mind raced. Linda, always at the hospital, trusted by Clara. Sirens wailed, police cruisers storming the lot, floodlights cutting the fog. Hayes cuffed the leader, his voice grim. We've got them. Daniel clung to Shadow and Sarah, Clara's tears falling, her voice fierce. Find her, Daniel. Save Lily. Hayes grabbed the USB, his face set. This name's Vaughn's network. We're close. But Daniel's voice was raw. Linda's the key. If she's Spectre's mole. Shadow's eyes met his, fierce, ready, a vow to protect. The office was secure, but Vaughn's shadow loomed, Lily's life hanging by a thread, and Shadow's instincts were their only hope. The Wisconsin rain lashed Willow Creek, the hospital's old storage warehouse, a hulking shadow of rusted beams and cracked concrete under a sky roaring with thunder. Daniel Reed gripped a flashlight, his graying brown hair soaked, his leather jacket bloodied from the hospital office raid where Shadow had saved them from Dr. Richard Monroe's hired guns. His bruised ribs screamed, but his heart pounded with fear for 6-year-old Lily Harper, fighting for life in the ICU after a barbiturate overdose misdiagnosed as death. Shadow, the black German shepherd, moved silently beside him, his scarred muzzle low, his brown eyes cutting through the fog, his bandaged flank a testament to his fight. Once Bravo, a K-9 brutalized in a meth lab explosion, Shadow's instincts had uncovered Monroe's falsified charts. Clara Harper, 40, Lily's mother, her blonde hair damp, her teacher's sweater torn, clutched a stolen ledger, her breath sharp. Sarah Harper, 16, Lily's sister, her blonde hair under a hoodie, held Shadow's leash, her eyes wide. Officer Michael Hayes, 50, his gray hair wet, his police uniform soaked, carried a burner phone, evidence of hospital board chair Ellen Vaughn's role as Spectre. The warehouse, a hub for Monroe's cover-up, loomed, its sagging doors a gateway to answers or a trap. Back entrance now, Hayes whispered, his voice taut, pointing to a chained gate. Guards, 4, armed. We get the patient files, we expose Vaughn. Daniel's hands shook, his flashlight beam unsteady, his army instincts battling dread, but his voice was fierce. Shadows not dying for their lies. We end this. Shadow's lunge at Monroe's man, exposing the barbiturate vial, fueled his resolve. Lily's recorded whisper. Dr. Monroe's friend scares me. Echoing. Sarah's voice trembled, stroking Shadow. He'll find it, Uncle Daniel. He's our hero. Clara's hand gripped Daniel's, her voice raw. Lily's fading, Daniel. We can't lose her again. Hayes's flashlight caught a guard's silhouette, radio buzzing. They're moving crates, files, drugs, he said, his face grim. We hit fast. Shadow's growl was low, his hackles up, leading them through the rain, his nose sniffing for threats. Daniel nodded, his throat tight. The ICU's crisis. Nurse Linda Gray, Clara's friend, caught with a syringe, burning in his mind. Let's move, he said, his voice low. The chained gate yielded to Hayes's bolt cutters, revealing a dank interior, pallets, shredded documents, and a faint whimper from a locked bay. Shadow's bark was sharp, his body tensing at a steel door marked records. Daniel pried it open, the sight gut-wrenching. 2 German shepherds, emaciated, caged, their K9 tags glinting. They're alive, he gasped, rushing forward, Shadow guarding him, his whine desperate. A male, scarred, whimpered, his eyes pleading. We're here, Daniel said, cutting the locks, tears burning. Hayes's pistol covered the door, his voice fierce. Move, pups! We're out. Clara grabbed a crate's lid, revealing burner phones, sedatives, and a patient ledger. This lists overdosed kids. Lily's name, she said, bagging a phone. But Shadow's growl turned rabid, his nose pawing a hidden crate. Daniel yanked it open, his breath catching. A laptop streaming live, not just the dogs, but Lily in the ICU, monitors flatlining, Linda's Shadow fleeing. They're killing her, Daniel screamed, his voice breaking, clutching the male shepherd. Sarah's sob choked, her voice fierce. Uncle Daniel, we have to save her. Headlights roared outside, 3 black sedans screeching into the lot. Vaughn's men spilling out, 6 rifles and tasers, their leader shouting, The files, read, now! Daniel dove behind a pallet, shielding Sarah, Shadow charging, tackling the leader, his jaws disarming a rifle, pinning him to the concrete. Hayes fired, grazing a second man, his shots precise despite a bleeding arm, but the others advanced, bullets shredding crates. Clara's arm bled from a graze, but she tackled a third, zip-tying him, her voice raw. Daniel, get the dogs out, Sarah screamed, her voice desperate. Shadow, come back. Daniel's rage erupted, his voice a roar. You're not taking them. He swung his crowbar, cracking a guard's knee, Shadow's snarl shielding the shepherds, who cowered behind him, the male nudging Sarah's leg, seeking safety. Hayes's radio crackled. Doctor. Emily Chen at the hospital, her voice urgent. Daniel! Lily's crashing again. Linda's talking. She says Vaughn's got a partner, Phantom, in the State Health Board. Daniel's heart stopped, his voice trembling. Phantom? Who's pulling the strings? The twist landed like a bomb. A woman's voice buzzed through the leader's radio, cold, commanding. Finish them, or Phantom takes over. Not Vaughn, but a higher power, orchestrating from the shadows. Clara's eyes widened, her voice raw. Another partner? Who's above Vaughn? Shadow's bark spiked, his nose at a crate, pawing frantically. Hayes ripped it open, revealing a hidden drive with emails, not just Vaughn, but a code name, Phantom, linked to a state senator, Margaret Klein. She's the money, Hayes gasped, clutching the drive. Vaughn's just the front. Daniel's pistol snapped up, his voice fierce. We're pinned. More guards flooded in, 8, armed, surrounding them. Shadow lunged, disarming a taser, protecting the dogs, while Clara's shots bought seconds, grazing a guard. Daniel's rib burned, but he shielded Sarah, his voice desperate. Clara, get to the ICU. The male shepherd whimpered, pressing against Sarah, her trust a mirror of Shadow's. The leader aimed at Shadow, his voice cold. Your mutts first. Daniel threw a crate lid, knocking the rifle free, his rage a soldier's fire. You'll never touch him. Shadow spun, pinning another guard, his jaws fierce but controlled. Hayes tackled a third, but the radio buzzed again, the woman's voice chilling. Burn it all, Vaughn. Reed's done. Daniel's scream was primal, Shadow's loyalty his anchor. Sirens wailed, police cruisers storming the lot, floodlights cutting the rain. Hayes cuffed the leader, his voice grim. You're done. Daniel clung to Shadow and the shepherds, Clara's voice a sob. You saved them, Daniel. Hayes's voice crackled through, shaken but firm. We've got Lily stabilized, Daniel. The feds are moving on Linda. Hayes grabbed the drive, his face set. This name's Klein's cartel ties. We're close. But Daniel's tears fell, his voice raw. Lily's still in danger, Clara. They're not done. Shadow's eyes met his, fierce, ready, a vow to fight. Clara's hand gripped his shoulder, her voice fierce. We'll protect her, Daniel. Shadow's with us. The warehouse was secure, the dogs safe, but Klein's shadow loomed, Lily's life at risk. Daniel's fight for Shadow, for justice, was a race against a hidden enemy, and Shadow's instincts were their only guide. The Wisconsin rain pounded Willow Creek, the hospital's basement morgue, a cavern of cold steel and flickering lights under a sky torn by lightning. Daniel Reed sat behind a metal autopsy table, his graying brown hair plastered with sweat, his leather jacket bloodied from the warehouse raid where Shadow had uncovered State Senator Margaret Klein's role as phantom in a hospital conspiracy. His bruised rib burned, his grazed arm throbbed, but his heart raced with dread for 6-year-old Lily Harper, barely stable in the ICU after a barbiturate overdose misdiagnosed as death. Shadow, the black German shepherd, lay alert by the door, his scarred muzzle tense, his brown eyes scanning the shadows, his bandaged flank a testament to his fight. Once Bravo, a canine brutalized in a meth lab explosion, Shadow's instincts had saved 2 caged shepherds and exposed Dr. Richard Monroe's falsified records. Clara Harper, 40, Lily's mother, her blonde hair loose, her teacher's sweater stained, clutched a stolen patient ledger, her breath shaky. Sarah Harper, 16, Lily's sister, her blonde hair under a hoodie, decoded the ledger on a laptop, her voice trembling. Uncle Daniel, this lists kids overdosed on purpose. The revelation of Nurse Linda Gray, Clara's friend, as a mole for hospital board chair Ellen Von Z, had turned the morgue into a war zone. Keep digging, Sarah, Daniel said, his voice raw, his gaze on Shadow, whose instincts had saved Lily. We need proof Klein's involved. Clara's photo of Lily slipped, her voice breaking. Lily's barely breathing, Daniel. How could Linda do this? Daniel's throat tightened, memories of saving Lily from a fire at 3 stinging. She's scared, Clara. They're using her. Sarah's eyes flashed, her voice fierce. Shadow's our hero, Uncle Daniel. He'll find the truth. Shadow's whine was soft, his nose nudging Daniel's hand, his loyalty a lifeline after Linda's betrayal. A thud echoed from the stairwell. Shadow's growl erupted, his hackles up, his body coiled. Daniel grabbed his knife, motioning Sarah to the corner, his voice a whisper. Clara, behind the table. Clara hesitated, her eyes on Shadow, then nodded, clutching the ledger. Sarah dragged Shadow, her voice panicked. Stay, boy. Daniel cracked the door, revealing Dr. Emily Chen, 35, her black hair damp, her neurologist's scrubs creased, a medical report in hand. It's me, she said, her voice urgent, glancing at Shadow, who softened but stayed alert. Lily's overdose was ordered by Klein. Hospital logs confirm it. Daniel's pulse spiked, his voice sharp. Klein, she's a senator. Emily nodded, her face grim. She's burying evidence to protect the hospital. Clara's sob choked, her voice raw. For money? They drugged my baby? Sarah's laptop pinged, her voice desperate. Another email, Uncle Daniel. From Phantom, clear the morgue, Vaughn. No survivors. Shadow's growl deepened, his nose snapping toward the vent where a faint hiss sounded. Gas seeping in. Daniel's blood ran cold, his voice fierce. They're gassing us! Move! The morgue door splintered. 5 men in tactical gear storming in, gas masks on, rifles raised, their leader shouting, "The ledger, read, now!" Shadow charged, a black blur, tackling the leader, his jaws disarming a rifle, pinning him to the floor. Daniel fired his concealed carry, grazing a second man, his shots steady despite his ribs scream, but the gas thickened, burning his lungs. Clara swung a scalpel tray, cracking a guard's mask, her voice fierce. "You won't erase Lily!" Sarah coughed, her voice raw. "Shadow, help!" Daniel tackled a third man, zip-tying him, his eyes stinging, his voice desperate. "Sarah, get to the stairs." Shadow spun, shielding Sarah, his bloodied flank heaving, his eyes fierce. The leader, mask cracked, laughed, his voice muffled. "Klein's done with you, Reed." "Phantom wants you dead." Daniel's rage erupted, his voice a roar. "Not today!" He smashed a chair over a guard's head, Shadow's snarl protecting Clara, who coughed, clutching the ledger. Emily's radio crackled. Officer Michael Hayes at the station, her voice urgent. "Daniel, Linda's talking. She named Klein's partner, hospital CEO David Walsh." Daniel's heart stopped, his voice trembling. "Walsh? Ellen Vaughn's brother?" The twist landed like a gut punch. The vent hissed louder, and Linda Gray, 42, blonde hair disheveled, her nurse's scrub stained, burst through a side door, syringe in hand, her face wild. "Clara, give me the ledger!" she screamed, lunging at her friend. Clara's voice broke, tears streaming. "Linda, you drugged my daughter." "My Lily?" Shadow's bark spiked, his body leaping at Linda, pinning her arm, the syringe clattering. Sarah's sob choked, her voice fierce. "You betrayed us, Aunt Linda." Daniel tackled a fourth guard, his vision blurring, his voice raw. "Why Linda? Why her?" Linda's eyes darted, her voice desperate. "They threatened my kid, Daniel." "Walsh said they'd kill him." Emily cuffed her voice grim. "You dosed Lily's IV, didn't you?" Linda's shoulders slumped, her voice a sob. "Just enough to keep her quiet. To save my son." Shadow's growl intensified, his nose at Linda's scrubs, pawing a hidden burner phone flashing. Walsh's orders: gas the morgue, take ledger. Daniel's blood froze, his voice fierce. "Who's Walsh working for, Linda? Give me a name." Linda's eyes widened, her voice a whisper. "Klein. She's untouchable." More guards flooded in, 7, armed, gas masks glowing in the haze. Shadow lunged, disarming a taser, protecting Sarah, while Daniel's shots bought seconds, grazing a guard. Clara's voice was a sob. "Daniel, save Lily." The male shepherd from the warehouse, now freed, pressed against Sarah, his trust mirroring Shadow's. Sirens wailed, police cruisers storming the lot, floodlights cutting the rain. Emily secured Linda, her face set, blood seeping from a cut. "We've got her, but Walsh is free." Daniel grabbed the laptop, his voice fierce. "This name's Klein's network. We're close." But his tears fell, his voice raw. "Lily's in danger, Clara." "We're not done." Shadow's eyes met his, fierce, ready, a vow to protect. The morgue was secure, but Walsh's shadow loomed, Lily's life on the line, and Shadow's instincts were their only guide. The Wisconsin storm raged over Willow Creek. The hospital's deserted parking garage, a fortress of concrete pillars and flickering sodium lights under a sky split by thunder. Daniel Reed crouched behind a parked van, his graying brown hair soaked, his leather jacket bloodied from the morgue ambush where Shadow had stopped Nurse Linda Gray's gas attack. His bruised rib burned, his grazed arm ached, but his heart pounded with dread for 6-year-old Lily Harper, clinging to life in the ICU after a barbiturate overdose misdiagnosed as death. Shadow, the black German shepherd, pressed against him, his scarred muzzle low, his brown eyes slicing through the rain, his bandaged flank a testament to his fight. Once Bravo, a canine brutalized in a meth lab explosion, Shadow's instincts had exposed hospital CEO David Walsh as a partner to State Senator Margaret Klein, codenamed Phantom. Clara Harper, 40, Lily's mother, her blonde hair damp, her teacher's sweater torn, clutched a stolen USB drive, her breath sharp. Sarah Harper, 16, Lily's sister, her blonde hair under a hoodie, held Shadow's leash, her eyes wide with fear. Doctor. Emily Chen, 35, her black hair loose, her neurologist's scrubs stained, gripped a burner phone, evidence of Walsh's hospital conspiracy. The garage, a rendezvous point for Walsh's cover-up, loomed, its echoing levels a battleground for truth. "Top level now," Emily whispered, her voice taut, pointing to a stairwell. "Guards 5 armed. We get Walsh's deal logs. We bury Klein." Daniel's hands trembled, clutching a crowbar, his army instincts afire despite the pain, his voice fierce. "Shadow's not dying for their secrets. We end this." Shadow's lunge at Linda, stopping her syringe, fueled his resolve. Lily's whisper. "The medicine tastes funny," burning in his mind. Sarah's voice shook, stroking Shadow. "He'll find it, Uncle Daniel." "He's our hero." Clara's hand gripped Daniel's, her voice raw. "Lily's slipping, Daniel. We can't let them win." Emily's flashlight caught a guard's shadow, radio buzzing. "They're loading crates, files, drugs," she said, her face grim. "We hit hard." Shadow's growl was low, his hackles up, leading them through the rain, his nose sniffing for threats. Daniel nodded, his throat tight. Linda's confession. "Walsh said they'd kill my son," echoing. "Let's move," he said, his voice low. The stairwell was slick, leading to a rooftop littered with crates and a parked black van. Daniel slipped up, Emily and Clara covering his flanks, Sarah and Shadow trailing, the air thick with gasoline and danger. Shadow's bark was sharp, his body tensing at a locked crate. Daniel jimmied it open, revealing patient files, cash, and a ledger marked Phantom. "This is it," he gasped, grabbing the ledger, but Shadow's growl turned feral, his nose pawing a hidden panel. Clara yanked it open, her voice trembling. "Emails. Walsh and Klein. Overdosing kids for profit." Lily was a test. Sarah's phone buzzed, her voice panicked. "Another text, Uncle Daniel." Reed's finished. Phantom's orders. Shadow's hackles rose, his nose snapping toward the van. Boots echoed, deliberate, heavy. Headlights roared, 3 black SUVs screeching onto the roof. Walsh's men spilling out, 6, rifles raised, their leader shouting, "The ledger! Reed! Now!" Daniel dove behind a crate, shielding Sarah. Shadow charging, tackling the leader, his jaws disarming a rifle, pinning him to the concrete. Emily fired, grazing a second man, her shots precise despite a bleeding cut. But the others advanced, bullets shredding crates. Clara's voice was a sob, clutching the USB. "They'll kill us, Daniel!" Sarah screamed, her voice raw. "Shadow, come back!" Daniel tackled a third man, zip-tying him, his ribs searing, his voice fierce. "Stay with me, Sarah!" Shadow spun, shielding Clara, his bloodied flank heaving, his eyes fierce. The leader, bloodied, laughed, his voice cold. Walsh's cleaning Willow Creek, Reed. Phantom wants you buried. Daniel's rage erupted, his voice a roar. Not tonight! He swung his crowbar, cracking a guard's arm. Shadow's snarl, protecting Sarah, who clung to the male shepherd from the warehouse, whimpering. Emily's radio crackled. Officer Michael Hayes at the hospital, his voice urgent. Daniel, Lily's stabilized, but Linda's naming Walsh's inside man. Dr. Susan Holt, the ER chief. Daniel's heart stopped, his voice trembling. Holt! She treated Lily's seizures. The twist landed like a sledgehammer. A figure emerged from the van. A woman, 55, gray-haired, in a tailored coat, pistol aimed at Daniel. You're relentless, Reed, she sneered, her voice venomous. Dr. Susan Holt, Walsh's inside ally, codenamed Spectre's Blade. Lily was collateral. You're digging ends now. Clara's scream was heart-wrenching, her voice breaking. You drugged my daughter. You watched her suffer? Shadow's snarl was primal, his body leaping at Holt, distracting her, the shot grazing Emily's shoulder, blood spraying. Sarah's voice was desperate, clutching Shadow's leash. Uncle Daniel, no! Daniel dove, tackling Holt, his fists swinging, a soldier's fury unleashed. You'll never touch them! Sarah's courage. Shadow's our hero, fueled him. The crowbar cracking Holt's wrist, the gun clattering. Clara cuffed her with a zip tie, her voice fierce. You're done, monster. But Holt's laugh was chilling, her eyes wild. Klein's untouchable, Reed. You've won nothing. Shadow's growls spiked, his nose at Holt's coat, pawing a hidden microchip, buzzing with a feed. Dozens of caged dogs in a Canadian port. They're trafficking them, Emily gasped, her voice raw. Klein's funding it all. More guards flooded in, 8 armed, gas masks glowing in the rain. Shadow lunged, disarming a taser, protecting Sarah, while Daniel's shots bought seconds, grazing a guard. Clara's voice was a sob. Daniel, save Lily! The male shepherd pressed against Sarah, his trust mirroring Shadow's. The leader aimed at Shadow, his voice cold. Your mutts first! Daniel threw a crate lid, knocking the rifle free, his rage a soldier's fire. You'll never touch him! Shadow pinned another guard, his jaws fierce but controlled. Emily tackled a 6th, but the radio buzzed again. Hayes, his voice panicked. Daniel, Walsh is at the ICU. He's after Lily. Clara's scream was raw, her voice fierce. He's going to finish her. Daniel's vision blurred, his voice desperate. We're trapped. Sirens roared, police cruisers storming the garage, floodlights cutting the storm. Emily secured Holt, her face set, blood seeping from her shoulder. We've got her, but Walsh is loose. Daniel grabbed the microchip, his voice fierce. This name's Klein's network. We're close. But his tears fell, his voice raw. Lily's fading, Clara. We've got to move. Shadow's eyes met his, fierce, ready, a vow to protect. The garage was secure. But Walsh's shadow loomed, Lily's life on the line, and Shadow's instincts were their only guide. The Wisconsin dawn broke raw and cold. The Willow Creek Hospital's ICU a sterile fortress of humming monitors and antiseptic air under a sky heavy with clouds. Daniel Reed stood in the dimly lit hallway, his graying brown hair matted, his leather jacket bloodied from the parking garage raid where Shadow had unmasked Dr. Susan Holt as Spectre's Blade, a key player in hospital CEO David Walsh's conspiracy. His bruised rib burned, his grazed arm throbbed, but his heart raced with fear for 6-year-old Lily Harper, fighting for life after a barbiturate overdose misdiagnosed as death. Shadow, the black German shepherd, pressed against him, his scarred muzzle low, his brown eyes vigilant, his bandaged flank a badge of his relentless fight. Once Bravo, a canine brutalized in a meth lab explosion, Shadow's instincts had saved caged dogs and exposed State Senator Margaret Klein's global trafficking network. Clara Harper, 40, Lily's mother, her blonde hair loose, her teacher's sweater stained, clutched Lily's medical chart, her breath shaky. Sarah Harper, 16, Lily's sister, her blonde hair under a hoodie, held Shadow's leash, her eyes red from tears. The ICU, now a battleground, pulsed with tension. Walsh, codenamed Spectre, was coming for Lily. "Security's on lockdown," Clara whispered, her voice taut, nodding to armed guards at the ICU door. "Walsh's men tried to breach the power grid last night." Daniel's hands trembled, gripping his knife, his army instincts ablaze despite the pain, his voice fierce. Shadow stopped Holt. "He'll stop Walsh." Shadow's lunge at Holt, exposing her microchip, fueled his resolve. Lily's whisper, "Dr. Monroe's friend scares me." Echoing. Sarah's voice shook, stroking Shadow. "He's our hero, Uncle Daniel. Lily's gotta make it." Clara's hand gripped Daniel's, her voice raw. "Walsh was my friend, Daniel." How could he betray her like this? Clara's chart trembled, her voice urgent. Lily's still got barbiturates in her system, trace doses, likely from tampered IVs. Someone's still dosing her. Daniel's pulse spiked, his voice sharp. "Inside the ICU? Who's got access?" Sarah's phone buzzed, her voice panicked. "Another text, Uncle Daniel." "Spectre says, end Harper tonight." Shadow's growl deepened, his nose snapping toward the hallway, where footsteps echoed, too deliberate, too heavy. Daniel's blood ran cold, his voice fierce. "They're here!" "Move!" The ICU door burst open, 4 men in tactical gear storming in, silenced pistols raised, their leader shouting, "The girl's done, Reed!" Shadow charged, a black blur, tackling the leader, his jaws disarming a pistol, pinning him to the floor. Daniel fired his concealed carry, grazing a second man, his shots precise despite his ribs scream, but the others advanced, bullets shattering monitors. Clara swung a tray, cracking a guard's arm, her voice fierce. "You won't touch my daughter," Sarah screamed, her voice raw. "Shadow, help!" Daniel tackled a third man, zip-tying him, his arm bleeding, his voice desperate. "Sarah, get to the nurse's station." Shadow spun, shielding Clara, his bloodied flank heaving, his eyes fierce. The leader, bloodied, laughed, his voice cold. "Walsh is cleaning Willow Creek, Reed. Spectre wants Harper silenced." Daniel's rage erupted, his voice a roar. "Not on my watch!" He smashed a chair over a guard's head, Shadow's snarl protecting Sarah, who clung to the male shepherd from the warehouse, whimpering. Clara's radio crackled. Dr. Emily Chen at the station, her voice urgent. "Daniel, Walsh has hacked the ICU cameras. He's watching you." Daniel's heart stopped, his voice trembling. "He's running this from inside?" The twist landed like a sledgehammer. A figure stepped from the shadows. A man, 58, silver-haired, in a tailored suit, pistol aimed at Daniel. "You're a pest, Reed," he sneered, his voice smooth. "David Walsh, Spectre himself. Lily's a loose end." "You're next." Clara's scream was heart-wrenching, her voice breaking. "You poisoned my baby, David. We trusted you." Shadow's snarl was primal, his body leaping at Walsh, distracting him, the shot grazing Clara's shoulder, blood spraying. Sarah's voice was desperate, clutching Shadow's leash. "Uncle Daniel, no!" Daniel dove, tackling Walsh, his fists swinging, a soldier's fury unleashed. "You'll never touch them." Sarah's courage, Shadow's our hero, fueled him, his knife cracking Walsh's wrist, the gun clattering. Clara cuffed him with a zip tie, her voice fierce despite her wound. "You're done, traitor." But Walsh's laugh was chilling, his eyes wild. "Klein's untouchable, Reed." You've won nothing." Shadow's growl spiked, his nose at Walsh's coat, pawing a hidden microchip, buzzing with a feed, hundreds of caged dogs in a Mexican port. "Global trafficking," Clara gasped, her voice raw. Walsh was just the puppet. More guards flooded in, 10, armed, gas masks glowing in the dim light. Shadow lunged, disarming a taser, protecting Sarah, while Daniel's shots bought seconds, grazing a guard. Clara's voice was a sob, clutching Lily's chart. "Daniel, save her!" The male shepherd pressed against Sarah, his trust mirroring Shadow's. The leader aimed at Shadow, his voice cold. "Your mutts first." Daniel threw a monitor, knocking the rifle free, his rage a soldier's fire. "You'll never touch him!" Shadow pinned another guard, his jaws fierce but controlled. Clara tackled a sixth, but the radio buzzed again. "Chen," her voice panicked. "Daniel, it's Monroe. He's alive, leading Walsh's men from the roof." Daniel's blood froze, his voice raw. "Monroe." "We exposed him." The chief physician's survival was a gut punch, his arrest a ruse to lure them here. Sarah's sob choked, her voice fierce. "They tricked us, Uncle Daniel." Clara's hand shook, her voice steel. "Monroe swore to protect Lily. He's a monster." Emily's flashlight swept Walsh's gear, revealing a microchip with a new feed. Lily's ICU room, a nurse slipping a syringe into her IV. "Another dose!" Emily screamed, her voice breaking. "They're killing her now!" Daniel's pistol snapped up, his voice fierce. "We're pinned!" More guards poured in, 12, armed, closing the circle. Shadow lunged, disarming a knife, protecting Clara, while Daniel's shots bought seconds, grazing a guard. Sarah's voice was desperate, clutching Shadow's leash. "Don't let them win!" Walsh's eyes gleamed, his voice cold. "You're too late, Reed." Lily's gone. Daniel's scream was primal, Shadow's loyalty his anchor. Sirens roared, police cruisers storming the hospital, floodlights cutting the rain. Emily secured Walsh, her face set, blood seeping from her shoulder. "We've got him, but Monroe's loose." Daniel grabbed the burner phone, his voice fierce. "This name's Klein's Empire. We're close." But his tears fell, his voice raw. "Lily's slipping, Clara. We've got to get to her." Shadow's eyes met his, fierce, ready, a vow to protect. The ICU was secure, but Monroe's shadow loomed, Lily's life fading, and Shadow's instincts were their only hope. The Wisconsin sun poured golden warmth over Willow Creek's community center, where townsfolk, officers, and news crews gathered for a ceremony celebrating a triumph over a sinister hospital conspiracy. Daniel Reed stood on a simple stage, his graying brown hair neatly combed, a clean denim jacket replacing the bloodied leather one from the ICU raid where Shadow had unmasked David Walsh as Spectre. Beside him, Sarah Harper, 16, Lily's sister, clutched a stuffed puppy, her blonde hair loose, her hoodie swapped for a green sweater, her sneakers scuffed from nights of danger. Shadow, the black German shepherd, sat proudly at Sarah's side, his scarred muzzle calm, his brown eyes vigilant, his healed flank a badge of his relentless courage. Once Bravo, a canine brutalized in a meth lab explosion, Shadow's barks had saved 6-year-old Lily Harper from a poisoned coffin, exposing a trafficking network led by State Senator Margaret Klein. Clara Harper, 40, Lily's mother, her blonde hair tied back, her teacher's sweater crisp, stood nearby, her smile warm, but her eyes shadowed by Lily's fragile recovery. Dr. Emily Chen, 35, her black hair free, her neurologist's scrubs pristine, reviewed medical files, her resolve unshaken. The center buzzed with hope, but Walsh's warning, Klein's untouchable, and Dr. Richard Monroe's escape cast a lingering shadow. Daniel gripped the podium, his voice steady but thick with emotion. "Shadow didn't just save Lily, he saved our town," he said, eyes sweeping the crowd. Sarah's hand in his. His courage cut through lies, and Sarah's heart showed us what trust means. This is your story, too, about fighting for what's right, no matter the cost. The crowd cheered, cameras flashing, a banner overhead reading, "Shadows Sanctuary." Daniel's throat tightened, his PTSD battles and memories of saving Lily from a fire at 3 now a badge of honor. Sarah's voice, "Shadows, our hero," burned bright. Shadow's whine was soft, his nose nudging Sarah, who giggled, her fear fading. Sarah took the mic, her small voice clear. "Shadow's my best friend. He stopped the bad guys and loves Lily." The German shepherd licked her hand, the crowd awing, many wiping tears. Daniel knelt, hugging her, his voice cracking. "You're my hero, Sarah. You and Shadow gave me a reason to keep going." Sarah hugged Shadow, whispering, "You're the best dog ever." The air thrummed with unity. Willow Creek reborn through a girl and her protector. Clara joined, holding a plaque, her voice warm but trembling. "Shadow's a canine legend, and Sarah's his light. Shadow's Sanctuary will rehab canines and kids because of them." She handed Sarah the plaque, the crowd roaring, kids waving signs. "Shadow saves." Lily, still in the hospital, sent a video message, her weak voice clear. "Thank you, Shadow." Daniel's chest swelled, but doubt gnawed. "Clara, we got Walsh, but Monroe's out there. Is Lily safe?" Shadow's tail flicked, his eyes alert, sensing his unease. Clara's smile was fierce. "We're close, Daniel. Shadow started this, and we'll finish it." Emily approached, her files heavy, her voice steady. "Feds are raiding ports. Mexico, Canada. Klein's partner, codenamed Viper, is a health board official tied to the cartel. We've got leads." She nodded at Shadow, awe shining. "This dog's why those kids are safe." "He's a miracle." The crowd applauded, but Daniel's gaze drifted to Sarah, his heart heavy. The burner phone's feed of caged dogs, Viper's shadow, Lily still a target. A familiar figure stepped forward. Tommy, 12, a shy boy whose sister was saved by Shadow's unit, holding a toy bone. "Shadow's like my sister's dog," he said, voice soft, tossing the bone. Shadow caught it, bounding back, the crowd laughing, Tommy's joy infectious. Sarah hugged him, her voice bright. "Shadow saves everybody." Daniel's tears fell, his voice a whisper. "You're changing lives, Sarah." Clara's hand squeezed his, her voice fierce. "You both are, Daniel." The ceremony buzzed, kids petting Shadow, locals sharing stories, the fund soaring. Emily pulled Daniel aside, her voice low. "We found a name. Viper's Dr. Alan Pierce, State Health Director. He's in Willow Creek, planning a final cover-up." Daniel's heart sank, the twist chilling. Pierce had visited Lily's ICU, offering condolences. "He was there," he whispered, his voice trembling. "He watched her suffer." Emily's radio crackled, a feds update. Pierce's signal pinged at the hospital, planning a data wipe. "We're moving." Shadow's growl was faint, his nose twitching toward the crowd's edge, a man in a dark jacket slipping away, unnoticed by most. Daniel's blood ran cold, his voice a whisper. "He's one of Pierce's, isn't he?" Sarah clung to Shadow, her small voice fierce. "Shadow will find him, Uncle Daniel, like he found Walsh." The twist deepened. A volunteer, Nancy Klein, a local nurse, approached, offering Sarah a cupcake, her smile too sharp. Shadow's bark erupted, sharp, his body lunging at Nancy, pinning her to the ground, snarling but controlled. Daniel's scream pierced the air, his voice fierce. "Get away from her!" Clara tackled Nancy, her knife drawn, finding a hidden burner phone in her purse, buzzing with a text. Viper's orders, "Take Harper girl." The crowd gasped, parents shielding kids, cameras rolling. Emily cuffed Nancy, her face grim. "She's a mole feeding Pierce intel. We're closer." Sarah's tears fell, her voice a sob. "Why me, Uncle Daniel?" Daniel hugged her, his voice breaking. "Because you're our strength, Sarah, and Shadow's our light. They can't win." Shadow's whine was a vow, his eyes locked on Nancy, his instincts unerring. Emily's voice was fierce despite her bandaged shoulder. "We've got Pierce's trail, Daniel. Nancy's phone has his location, a hospital server room, tonight." Clara's eyes blazed, her voice steady. "We end this, Daniel. For Lily." The celebration paused, officers forming a perimeter, the crowd hushed. Daniel's phone buzzed, a video from Lily, awake, whispering, "Uncle Daniel, Shadow saved me." Daniel's heart leapt, his voice raw. "She's awake, Clara." "Lily's fighting!" Clara's tears fell, her voice fierce. "Then we fight too, for her." Sarah hugged Shadow, her small voice defiant. "You'll save more kids, won't you, Shadow?" The German shepherd's eyes met hers, fierce, ready, a promise to protect. The ceremony resumed, but Daniel's fire, the spark Sarah and Shadow had lit, was unstoppable, a beacon for the battle ahead. The Wisconsin sunset bathed Willow Creek in hues of gold and rose, the community center glowing with warmth as locals, officers, and news crews gathered to celebrate a victory over a sinister hospital conspiracy. Daniel Reed stood at a podium, his graying brown hair neat, a clean flannel shirt replacing the bloodied leather jacket from the hospital server room raid where Shadow had exposed Dr. Alan Pierce as Viper, the mastermind behind 6-year-old Lily Harper's near-fatal overdose. Beside him, Sarah Harper, 16, Lily's sister, beamed, her blonde hair tied with ribbons, her green sweater bright, her sneakers scuffed, clutching a stuffed puppy. Shadow, the black German shepherd, sat tall, his scarred muzzle proud, his brown eyes soft yet vigilant, his healed flank a symbol of his courage. Once Bravo, a canine brutalized in a meth lab explosion, Shadow's barks had saved Lily from a poisoned coffin, dismantling a global trafficking ring led by State Senator Margaret Klein. Clara Harper, 40, Lily's mother, her blonde hair loose, her teacher's sweater crisp, smiled from the sidelines, pride in her eyes as Lily, still weak, sat in a wheelchair nearby, awake after weeks in the ICU. Dr. Emily Chen, 35, her black hair free, her neurologist's scrubs pristine, watched the crowd, her resolve unshaken. The ceremony pulsed with hope, but Pierce's final text, Viper's networks global, hinted at a shadow still lurking. Daniel gripped the podium, his voice clear, trembling with emotion. "Shadow didn't just save Lily. He saved our hearts," he said, eyes sweeping the crowd, Sarah's hand in his. His loyalty broke through betrayal, and Sarah's courage showed us what love means. This is your story, too, about trusting the bonds that heal us. The crowd roared, cameras flashing, a banner overhead reading, Shadow's Sanctuary. Daniel's throat tightened, his PTSD battles and memories of saving Lily from a fire at 3 now a badge of honor. Sarah's voice, Shadow's our hero, was a beacon of light. Shadow's whine was soft, his nose nudging Sarah, who giggled, her fear gone. Sarah took the mic, her voice ringing. "Shadow's my best friend. He saved Lily and loves us." The German shepherd licked her hand, the crowd cheering, many wiping tears. Daniel knelt, hugging her, his voice cracking. "You're my miracle, Sarah. You and Shadow gave me back my life." Sarah hugged Shadow, whispering, "You're the best dog ever." The air hummed with unity, Willow Creek reborn through a girl and her protector. Clara stepped up, holding a medal, her voice warm. "Shadow's a canine legend, and Sarah's his spark. Shadow's sanctuary will rehab canines and kids because of them. She pinned the medal on Shadow's collar, the crowd erupting, kids waving signs. Shadow saves. Lily, her blue dress bright, raised a shaky hand, her voice weak but clear. Shadow's my hero. Daniel's chest swelled, but fear lingered. Emily, we got Pierce, but that text, is it over? Shadow's tail flicked, his eyes alert, sensing his unease. Emily's smile was fierce. We're close, Daniel. Shadow started this, and we'll keep fighting. Emily joined, her badge glinting, her voice steady. Feds are dismantling the network. Hundreds arrested, dogs coming home from Mexico, Canada, beyond. Pierce's files exposed Viper's empire. She nodded at Shadow, awe shining. This dog's why Tommy, Ellie, and so many are safe. He's changed everything. The crowd applauded, but Daniel's gaze drifted to Sarah, his heart heavy. The text's warning. A new shadow, Lily still vulnerable. A familiar figure approached. Tommy, 12, holding a toy bone. His sister, a patient saved by Shadow's unit. Shadow's like my sister's dog, he said, voice shy, tossing the bone. Shadow caught it, bounding back. The crowd laughing, Tommy's joy infectious. Sarah hugged him, her voice bubbly. He saves everybody. Daniel's tears fell, his voice a whisper. You're making miracles, Sarah. Clara's hand squeezed his, her voice fierce. You both are, Daniel. The celebration buzzed, kids petting Shadow, locals sharing stories, the fun soaring. Emily pulled Daniel aside, her voice low. We traced the text, a new code name, Wraith, Klein's mentor, still free, tied to an international syndicate. He's vanished, but we're hunting. Daniel's heart sank, the twist chilling. Wraith had been a shadow at Lily's funeral, probing about her case. He planned this, Daniel whispered, his voice trembling. Shadow was always his target. Emily's radio crackled, a Feds update. Wraith's signal pinged in Chicago, planning a new shipment. We're moving. Shadow's growl was faint, his nose twitching toward the crowd's edge, a woman in a dark coat, slipping away, unnoticed by most. Daniel's blood ran cold, his voice a whisper. She's one of them, isn't she? Sarah clung to Shadow, her small voice fierce. Shadow will find her, Uncle Daniel, like he found the bad nurse. The twist deepened. A volunteer, Ellen Walsh, approached, offering Sarah a juice box, her smile too tight. Shadow's bark erupted sharp, his body lunging at Ellen, pinning her to the ground, snarling but controlled. Daniel's scream pierced the air, his voice fierce. Get away from her! Clara tackled Ellen, her knife drawn, finding a hidden microchip in her purse, buzzing with a text. Wraith's orders, take Harper girl. The crowd gasped, parents shielding kids, cameras rolling. Emily cuffed Ellen, her face grim. She's a courier, feeding Wraith intel. We're closer. Sarah's tears fell, her voice a sob. Why me, Uncle Daniel? Daniel hugged her, his voice breaking. Because you're our light, Sarah, and Shadow's our strength. They can't win. Shadow's whine was a vow, his eyes locked on Ellen, his instincts unerring. Clara's voice was fierce. We've got Wraith's trail, Daniel. Ellen's chip has his next drop, Chicago port, tomorrow. Emily's eyes blazed, her voice steady. We end this, Daniel, for Lily. Daniel took the mic, his voice heartfelt. Shadow's story is about healing, trusting the instincts that guide us, the bonds that save us. It's yours, too. What's your story with a loyal pet? He smiled at Sarah, who tossed a ball, Shadow leaping, the crowd cheering. Join Shadow's sanctuary. Help us save canines and kids, one heart at a time. Clara raised a glass, her voice carrying. To Sarah, Daniel, and Shadow, Willow Creek's soul. The crowd toasted, kids mobbing Shadow, Daniel's laughter mingling with Sarah's. Emily handed him a letter from Tommy, his handwriting shaky. "Shadow's my hero. Thank you, Sarah." Daniel's tears fell, clutching it, Shadow's nose on his hand. "You knew, boy," he whispered, kissing his head. The celebration faded, but Daniel's fire, the spark Sarah and Shadow had lit, was eternal, a beacon for the battles ahead. Subscribe to our channel for more stories like this. Leave a like and share your thoughts below.